Hey everyone, today we'll be taking a look at World War Z on the Nintendo Switch, something I never thought would happen. Given the explosion of popularity of the Switch, we have seen many games that we never thought would run on the system, and they have been coined impossible ports. So let's take a look today and see if World War Z falls in that category and how well the game translates to handhelds. If you do enjoy the video, be sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing. I currently have a 1,000 subscriber goal, of which we are really close to hitting, so thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed so far. And thank you so much to Saber Interactive for providing a review copy so I can take a look at the Switch release. With that said, let's get into it. I imagine most people who are watching are either fans of the game and are interested in playing World War Z on the go, and then there are others who are brand new to the game. I've been playing the Switch port non-stop the past few days and have gone through all the levels a few times. I did spend the majority of my time in docked mode, although I did spend several hours playing in handheld as well, so we'll be going over how both modes perform. And while this is mostly going to be focused on how well the Switch version holds up, I will do a quick overview of the game for first-time players. World War Z is an online 4-person co-op zombie shooter where you play as various groups of survivors across the world. You start off in the subways of New York, then battle through military bases in Jerusalem, fend off the cold in Russia, and then finally defend a large group of survivors as they flee Tokyo. There will also be 3 France levels and Horde mode released later as free updates, which were part of the first World War Z expansion. There are currently 14 levels in the Switch version, and after the free update there will be 17. It's basically the Game of the Year edition that was being sold before the current Aftermath expansion came out. There's 2 versions. The first is $40, which includes the game and all the content, and then a $50 deluxe edition that includes cosmetic character and weapon skins. If you buy the base version, you can upgrade to the deluxe edition for $20 afterwards, or buy each cosmetic set individually. As you explore your way through each level, you have to scavenge resources and weapons, and then each level culminates in a gigantic epic battle against a zombie swarm. The main defining feature of those swarms is the zombie pyramid mechanic, where zombies will climb on top of each other to reach higher up places, making nowhere safe. I've played a lot of similar games, and I have yet to find anything quite as exhilarating as going against these massive swarms in World War Z. You can choose to play as any one of 7 classes, including the Drone Master, which was added in a free update after the original game launched. Each class has their own inherent passive abilities alongside special equipment they can use. Like for instance, the medic has a stim pistol that they can use to give their teammates a temporary health boost, and the gunslinger can hurl a grenade to explode zombies to pieces. There's even a nice big skill tree for each class, and if you watched my channel before, you know I love my skill trees. You can customize them according to your playstyle, and in some cases you'll be able to change your equipment loadout, like in the Hellraiser's case where you can choose to use remote detonated C4 or plantable claymore mines. There's also an extensive selection of weapons that you can find as you go through each level, and all of them can be leveled up as well to improve everything from their magazine size to damage dealt. There's everything from shotguns, handguns, semi-automatic rifles, burst-fire rifles, fully automatic weapons, and even a crossbow that fires explosive bolts. Just make sure not to hit your teammates if you use it. Because yes, there is friendly fire on top of fending off zombies, you will have to make sure you not hit your teammates in the crossfire, or else you might find yourself fighting off the zombie horde alone. There are 5 difficulty levels, each one increases the amount of friendly fire dealt, zombie damage, and makes resources more scarce. Once you hit insane difficulty, you lose the minimap, and on extreme difficulty, you no longer see the nameplates above your teammates, making friendly fire more difficult to avoid. You can choose to play with up to 3 other players, or with a group of bots if you want to go at it solo. There is a public matchmaking mode, private lobbies, and an offline mode as well. Although like always, I would strongly recommend playing with friends for this style of game, there is a great matchmaking system in place, so you should always be able to find people to play with. There is also a PvP mode where teams of 4 go against each other with the added spin of having zombie hordes spawn in the levels as well. For the Switch version, it's actually a separate free download, which is great if you're short on storage space. It's a fun mode to jump into now and again, although the PvE portion of the game is really the main focus. One thing I've continually praised is the level design, which is absolutely top-notch. The level designers have been consistently able to create adrenaline pump intense moments mixed with calmer sections where you can explore each level. As far as World War Z the game is concerned, there is a ton of fun to be had along with plenty of content, so there's no question as to if I recommend it or not. I absolutely do recommend it. But the real question is it worth buying on the Switch for people who already own the game and are interested in playing on the go, or if you are new to the game entirely? I have to say, I had no idea what to expect. We've seen games like The Witcher 3 and Outer Worlds be ported to the Switch, so I guess anything is possible. Although lately we have seen cloud versions of games be released on the system where you stream the game instead of actually having it run on the hardware. While this will allow the game to run at a higher resolution and frame rate than it would running natively on the Switch, it raises the issue of lag and responsiveness. I'm glad to say World War Z runs natively on the Switch, targeting 720p while using dynamic resolution scaling for intense graphical moments, running at 30 FPS. Obviously, sacrifices were going to have to be made, and according to an interview of the game's lead designer, Dmitry Grigorenko, he stated making the port was the hardest thing we have had to do. It's pretty apparent comparing the Switch versions to others that a lot of graphical details had to be scaled back quite a bit across the board. That said, I came away very impressed at what the development team at Saber Interactive was able to pull off. Don't get me wrong, it's obviously not perfect and there are issues, but considering the amount of zombies on screen at once, it's nothing short of a miracle that they were able to get the game running on the Switch at all, let alone as well as they did here. Now, I didn't individually count every zombie on the screen, but as far as I can tell, the zombie count seems pretty consistent to what I experienced on the PS4, so as far as gameplay goes, it seems like nothing was sacrificed. I know I've seen people having issues with crashes on the PlayStation platforms, however, here I ran into 0 crashes, and I went through every level, some multiple times, and it got through them all. Animations did take a noticeable dip in quality. While zombies' heads explode when you kill them in close range, at distance, body parts do not shoot off like in other versions of the game. Also, in some levels like New York Chapter 4, zombie bodies piled on the ground are simply flat textures instead of fully rendered. It also does suffer from Switch blurriness that we have seen present in other games, especially if you're used to playing on PC or other consoles. 720p itself is pretty noticeable, especially if you're playing on a high-resolution TV, and when it drops in resolution during horde sections, it's pretty apparent. I'm not faulting the developers here though, I think they did the best they could given the capabilities of the platform, but it is something to keep in mind if you are used to playing the game in a higher resolution. Of course, if your main platform is a Switch, it's something you're probably already used to already, and it just comes with the territory, unfortunately. Performance-wise, it does differ between docked and handheld modes. Handheld ran very well. I actually did not experience many drops in frame rate really at all. Obviously, going from my 144Hz monitor to a 30 FPS handheld is very noticeable, but it still felt nice and smooth. While docked mode ran much better than anticipated, it did suffer from some frame rate drops during the more intense horde battles, even when the resolution dropped. However, it did not look choppy like when I experienced FPS drops on the PS4, but more looked like the game slowed down. My capture card inserts duplicate frames, so it will not show in the footage here, however. But outside of hordes, it did keep at 30 FPS pretty consistently, so the game is absolutely playable in that regard, and it's really not much worse than what I experienced when playing on the PS4 Pro. Although granted, the PS4 Pro did run at a much higher resolution and graphical settings. I did run into a few audio glitches. It wasn't very frequent, but sometimes certain audio cues would cut out, especially during teammates' gunfire. It's a pretty minor issue, but I did want to mention it. Outside of that, I really didn't run into many bugs outside of a few one-off things. There was one level where an NPC just kept running in circles and I was unable to continue unless she ran into a certain spot. Luckily, after about a minute of her running around, she did teleport to the correct location. The AI clearly struggles at times, and I did notice bot teammates did not work quite as well as on other platforms, and sometimes zombies had pathing issues, but neither was game-breaking. I know Nintendo Switch Online has had major issues with certain games being very laggy, but funnily enough, the Switch version might have been my best experience over the 4 platforms I've played the game on now. I ran into almost no lag at all while playing wireless. Granted, I do have fast internet, however, I do still run into lag sometimes frequently on PC and PS5. Obviously, your experience with the online service may vary depending on your internet, but for me personally, I did not run into any issues. The biggest positive for me was being able to play in handheld mode. I did find myself wishing I had the new OLED Switch because of the increased screen size, not to mention I imagine the colors would look much better. A huge surprise bonus was the native voice chat functionality. All I had to do was plug my headset into the Switch's combo headphones mic jack and it worked just fine. You can turn it off and on whenever you want by hitting the minus button, and then also adjust incoming voice chat volume in the game's menu. It was really nice not to have to use the Switch mobile app to use voice chat, although at the same time I really didn't run into many people using voice chat. The game is much better when you communicate, and they do have an official Discord setup that has both looking for group and voice chat sections as well. And you might find yourself using that because the potentially only real issue with a Switch release is the lack of crossplay. Well, I was eventually able to find a group. It did take a few minutes at times, and sometimes I had to try looking on a different difficulty. So like I said at the start, if possible, it is a much better experience if you can play with a group of friends. That said, they did make it easy to add people you meet in matchmaking to your friend list, as you can simply do so by hitting the X button, then adding them without having to worry about exchanging friend codes. Despite the sacrifices that had to be made, given the power of the Nintendo Switch, I came away very impressed with what Saber Interactive was able to do. Listen, it basically looks like a PlayStation 3 game, but that's simply the reality of what the Switch's hardware is able to produce in this style of game. I think given the circumstances, it could have been a lot worse, and the main thing for me is the game is functionally playable at a relatively steady frame rate. Although yes, of course, the visuals have taken a massive hit. But when it comes down to whether I recommend the World War Z Switch port or not, It really depends on what you personally are looking for and what platforms you have available to play on. For people who are new to the game and are interested in picking it up, it's a great game and you can have hundreds of hours of fun with it. However, you are going to have a better experience on basically every other platform. So if you are exclusively going to play on your TV at home and have a PlayStation, Xbox, or PC available, I would recommend buying the game on any of those platforms. If the Switch is the only console you have available, then yes, I would say go for it. Just do keep in mind the issues I listed and know it's not the most ideal way to experience the game. Now, when it comes to people who are interested in playing the game almost exclusively handheld, I would say go for it. I had so much fun being able to play the game wherever I wanted, and if you are a big fan of the game already and want to play on the go, it's a good experience given the Switch's limitations. This is one of the rare times I will recommend going for the Deluxe Edition, as I do think the extra $10 is worth the extra cosmetics, although it is absolutely not required and going with the standard version is perfectly fine. The real question now is how well the game will perform on the Steam Deck, as I imagine it will be a much better experience than on the Switch. It will still be limited to 720p, however, I would imagine the Steam Deck's hardware should be able to push out 60 FPS at that resolution, alongside turning up the graphical settings compared to what the Switch version is able to do. Of course, that's if you can actually get your hands on one, which I imagine will be quite difficult if you did not pre-order one already. If you are a first-time World War Z player and picked up the Switch version, let me know down in the comments if you're enjoying it. Up next will be my Forza Horizon 5 review, and then I have a few games that I missed out on when they came out that I'm going to cover, like Far Cry 6 and Tales of Arise. Like I said at the start, we are extremely close to the 1,000 subscriber goal, so if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing and sharing my content. Both things really help out the channel. Thanks so much for watching, see you all in the next video.